The ambulance sirens fell silent at the main entrance of Yale New Haven Hospital. But the silence did not last long. It was broken by the wail of police cars. The first day of summer in New Haven was warm and cloudless, but in the maternity ward of the hospital, an event occurred that plunged everyone into a cold horror. Detective Isaac Freeman climbed the steps of the hospital, clutching a half-empty cup of coffee in his hand. He hadn't had time to eat breakfast when he received the call about the shooting. A shooting in a hospital is always twice as bad. And when it's in the maternity ward, it's unbearable. "Detective Freeman," he said briefly, showing his badge to the officer standing guard at the yellow tape cordoning off the corridor. "Room 412, sir," the officer replied. "Patrolman Jackson is already there, securing the crime scene." Freeman nodded and quickly made his way down the corridor. The atmosphere was one of shock and turmoil. Nurses with tears in their eyes tried to calm the frightened patients. Doctors whispered to each other, casting anxious glances toward the cordoned-off room. "Detective," greeted a young patrolman at the entrance to the ward. "The victim is Elisha Thomas, 30 years old. She was found by a nurse at about 6 in the morning during a routine check. Single gunshot wound to the heart. Judging by the lack of noise, it appears to have been fired from a silenced pistol." Freeman put on latex gloves and shoe covers, then entered the room. The woman was lying on the hospital bed, as if asleep. If it weren't for the dark stain on her hospital gown in the chest area, one might have thought she was just sleeping soundly. Her dark skin contrasted with the white hospital sheets, and her face was frozen in a look of surprise, as if she couldn't believe what was happening until the very last second. "Are the forensic guys here yet?" Freeman asked. "Yes, sir. They're finishing up." The elderly medical examiner looked up from the body and nodded to the detective. "Time of death was approximately between 2 and 3 in the morning. A single shot, professional, straight through the heart. The killer knew what he was doing." "Any signs of a struggle?" "None. Most likely the victim knew the killer, or at least didn't perceive him as a threat." Freeman slowly surveyed the room. There was a vase of flowers on the nightstand with a phone next to it. "Check the phone?" "Yes, sir. It's locked, and the forensic team is working on it." "What about the baby?" Freeman asked, noticing that the crib was empty. The patrolman frowned. "Actually, the babies. They're twins, sir, boys. They're in the neonatal unit under observation." Freeman raised his eyebrows in surprise. "When did she give birth?" "Yesterday afternoon, around 2:30. The detective walked over to the window. It was closed from the inside, with no signs of forced entry. "So the killer came in through the door. We should have camera footage from that time." "I've already requested them, sir. But there's a problem. There was a brief failure in the video surveillance system during the night shift, lasting about 15 minutes, just around the time of the murder." Freeman frowned. This no longer looked like a spontaneous crime. A system failure was clearly not a coincidence. "I need to talk to the hospital staff, especially those who were on duty last night, and find out who the children's father is." "About the latter, sir," said the patrolman, handing him a tablet with an open file. "The birth certificate lists a Raymond Clark." Freeman took the tablet and scrolled through the document. Raymond Clark, 40 years old, owner of the Southern Flavors restaurant chain. The name sounded familiar. "Is this the same Clark who owns restaurants all over Connecticut?" "Yes, sir. And something else. He's married, and clearly not to Elisha Thomas. Notify him. I need to talk to him. In the meantime, I want to meet with Miss Thomas's attending physician." 10 minutes later, the detective was sitting in the office of Dr. Sheila Banks, the obstetrician-gynecologist who had delivered Elisha's babies. "This is terrible, just terrible," Dr. Banks repeated, nervously shuffling through the papers on her desk. "I can't believe it. Just yesterday she gave birth to 2 beautiful boys, and today—" Her voice faltered. "Dr. Banks, I understand you're shocked, but I need your help. Tell me everything you know about Miss Thomas." Dr. Banks took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "Elisha has been under my care since the first weeks of her pregnancy. She was healthy and led a healthy lifestyle. The pregnancy went smoothly. She always came to her appointments alone, never mentioned the father of the children, and I didn't ask. It's none of my business." "Did you notice anything unusual about her behavior in the last few days?" The doctor thought for a moment, Yesterday, after giving birth, she seemed frightened. I thought it was just the usual excitement of a new mother, especially considering she had twins. But now, looking back, she kept checking her phone as if she was waiting for a message, and she asked that no one be allowed in except the medical staff. At the time, I thought she just wanted some rest, but so she was expecting danger? It seems so. Although, Dr. Banks paused for a moment. Last night we had relaxed visiting restrictions due to an update to the fire alarm system. Some visitors were allowed to stay longer than usual. It was a temporary measure, but... You mean the killer could have taken advantage of that? Possibly. There were more people in the ward than usual in the evening. Freeman wrote down the information. Relaxed restrictions and a malfunction in the video surveillance system. It no longer looked like a coincidence. Is there anything else you can tell me about Elisha? She worked as an administrator at a private clinic on Whitney Avenue. She was very organized and collected. She was never late for appointments, and also... Dr. Banks lowered her voice. In the last month of her pregnancy, she said she was going to start a new life after giving birth. She mentioned moving to another city. That was an important detail. Freeman made another note in his notebook. Leaving Dr. Banks' office, the detective decided to check Elisha's personal belongings. In the small purse she had brought with her to the hospital, he found the usual women's accessories, a wallet with several $100s in credit cards, and a smartphone that had already been examined by forensic experts. "Sir, we've accessed the phone," one of the technicians reported. "There are a lot of messages from someone named R. Judging by everything, it's Raymond Clark, and there are photos." Freeman glanced at the screen. The photos showed Elisha and a well-dressed middle-aged man with a confident smile, embracing each other against the backdrop of the sea, in a restaurant, in a park. They looked happy. The messages the technician showed him told the story of their relationship. The last messages from R had been sent yesterday. "Congratulations on the birth of our sons. I can't wait to see you. I love you. I've arranged everything. Soon we'll be together, all four of us, I promise." Freeman read Elisha's reply. "I'm scared, Ray. She knows something. Today the nurse said someone was asking about me. The description sounded like V. V was probably Clark's wife, Freeman thought. He continued reading the messages, but found nothing else of significance. Apparently, Elisha was in a romantic relationship with a married man, had twins with him, and he seemed to be planning to leave his wife for her. "Do we have Miss Thomas's address?" Freeman asked. "Yes, sir. Hanson Street, 23, apartment 4. "All right, let's go there." Elisha Thomas's apartment was in a neat apartment building in a relatively quiet neighborhood. Detective Freeman used the keys found in the victim's purse to get inside. The apartment was small but cozy and well furnished. There was a baby crib in the living room, still unpacked. Photos of Elisha with her parents and friends hung on the walls. Freeman methodically searched every room until he reached the bedroom. There was an album on the bedside table. Freeman opened it and saw many photos of Elisha and Raymond Clark. Judging by the dates, their relationship had lasted at least 2 years. The last pages contained ultrasound photos and notes about the pregnancy. In the nightstand drawer, Freeman found a stack of letters. Some had been sent from a luxury hotel on the coast, where the lovers had apparently met. In the letters, Raymond promised Elisha that they would soon be together, that he would settle the divorce, and that he loved her and their future children. But the most important find was an envelope hidden under the mattress. Inside were documents for a new apartment in Boston in Alicia's name, and train tickets dated for the following week. She was indeed preparing to leave. Freeman photographed the documents and sent the images to the station for further analysis. He was sure that the motive for the murder was related to a love triangle: Elisha, Raymond, and his wife. A classic motive for a crime of passion. Now the detective had to meet with the twins' father and find out what he knew about what had happened. If his suspicions were correct, Raymond Clark should already know about his lover's death. The question was how he had reacted and what he was going to do next. Leaving Elisha's apartment, Freeman glanced back at the crib. 2 newborn boys had just lost their mother. Their fate now depended on their father, who may not yet have realized how much his life had changed in the last 12 hours. Raymond Clark's office was located on the top floor of a business center in the business district of New Haven. Glass walls, modern furniture, and panoramic views of the city created an atmosphere of success and prosperity. Detective Freeman sat in the spacious office, waiting for the owner of the Southern Flavors restaurant chain to show up. The door opened and Raymond Clark entered. His eyes were red as if he hadn't slept all night or had been crying. His impeccably tailored suit couldn't hide his condition. He looked devastated. "Detective Freeman?" His voice was hoarse. "I got your message. Is it true? Is Elisha really—" "I'm afraid so, Mr. Clark. My condolences." Raymond sank heavily into the chair opposite Freeman. "I can't believe it. We were talking yesterday. She was so happy. Our boys—" "Mr. Clark, I understand that this is a difficult time for you, but I need to ask you a few questions." Raymond nodded, wiping his eyes. "I understand. Go ahead. Tell me about your relationship with Elisha Thomas." Raymond took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "We met 2 years ago at a charity dinner. She worked at the clinic that sponsored the event. There was an immediate attraction between us. I know I was married, and I'm not proud of that, but—" He paused. "I fell in love with her, Detective. I truly loved her." "When did you find out she was pregnant?" "About 10 months ago. Elisha didn't want to tell me at first. She was afraid I'd be against it. But when she told me, I was happy." Raymond tried to smile, but it came out sad. "When we found out it was twins, we decided it was a sign. Our new family." "What were your plans for the future?" "I was going to divorce Valerie. I had all the papers ready." Raymond pointed to a briefcase standing against the wall. "They're in there. I was going to discuss it with my wife in the next few days. I bought an apartment in Boston for Elisha and the children until everything was settled. Then we would have moved in together, maybe to New York or Los Angeles. We would have started a new life." Freeman took notes without interrupting. The story matched what he had learned from the documents in Elisha's apartment. "Did your wife know about your relationship with Miss Thomas?" Raymond frowned. "I didn't tell her, but Valerie, she's a smart woman. She may have suspected something. We weren't close in recent years." "What about the pregnancy? The children?" "No, I made sure to keep that a secret. I wanted to talk about the divorce first, and then everything else." Freeman looked Raymond straight in the eye. "Mr. Clark, where were you last night between 2 and 3 o'clock?" "At home, in bed, with Valerie." Raymond shook his head. "I know how that sounds, Detective, but I loved Elisha. I was looking forward to having children with her. Why would I kill her? Sometimes people do things they don't think through." "Not me." Raymond leaned forward. "I'm a businessman, Detective. I plan everything in advance. If I wanted to get rid of Elisha, I wouldn't have waited until she gave birth, and I certainly wouldn't have put my name on the birth certificate. That's absurd." There was logic in Clark's words. Freeman decided to change direction. "What can you tell me about your wife?" "What kind of person is she?" Raymond raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Valerie? She's reserved, always mindful of her reputation. We've been together for 15 years, but the last 5, let's just say the marriage exists more on paper. She's involved in her charity work, and I'm in the restaurant business." "How do you think she would react if she found out about your affair and the children?" "Valerie isn't the type to make a scene. She always keeps her emotions in check. I think she'd be upset, but—" Raymond fell silent, apparently realizing where the detective was going with this. "You don't think Valerie could—" "I'm just gathering information, Mr. Clark. I need to talk to your wife. Is she home?" "Yes, she should be. She had a meeting at a charity this morning, but she's usually back by noon." An hour later, Freeman was standing in front of the Clarks' elegant mansion in a prestigious neighborhood of New Haven. The house was surrounded by a well-kept garden, and a silver Mercedes was parked in the driveway. The door was opened by a slender woman with perfect posture. Valerie Clark looked exactly as Freeman had imagined. Impeccable hair, an expensive suit, minimal jewelry, just pearl earrings and a delicate platinum necklace. Even at home, she looked as if she were getting ready for a social event. "Detective Freeman? Come in." Her voice was even and calm. "Raymond said you'd be stopping by. Tea? Coffee?" "No, thank you." Mrs. Clark Valerie led him into the living room, a spacious room with antique furniture and modern art on the walls. "Have a seat. I understand you're investigating the murder of this unfortunate woman?" Raymond was very upset. "Yes, Elisha Thomas. Did you know her?" Valerie shook her head. "No, I never met her. I only found out about her today from my husband. And how did you react when you found out that your husband had been having an affair, that he had children? A slight shadow passed over Valerie's face, but she quickly regained her composure. Detective Raymond and I have been married for 15 years. We don't have children, and in recent years our marriage has been difficult to describe as passionate. I can't say that the news of his affair came as a shock. Disappointment, yes, but not shock. And the news about the children? That was unexpected, Valerie admitted. Raymond always said he didn't want children, at least not with me. There was a hint of bitterness in her voice, but she quickly got her emotions under control. Where were you last night, Mrs. Clark? At home with my husband. We had dinner around 8, watched a movie, and went to bed around 11. I got up at 7 in the morning and went to a meeting of the Board of Trustees for a foundation that helps children from disadvantaged families. And you were home the whole time? You didn't go out at night? Valerie frowned slightly. No, Detective. I slept next to my husband all night. You can ask him. I already did, Freeman nodded. One last question, Mrs. Clark. Did you know that Miss Thomas was pregnant? No, Valerie replied after a short pause. As I said, I didn't even know she existed until today. Freeman watched her reaction closely, but Valerie remained unperturbed. Either she was telling the truth, or she was an excellent actress. Well, thank you for your cooperation, Mrs. Clark. I may have additional questions. Of course, Detective. I want this terrible crime solved as soon as possible. As he left the Clark's house, Freeman couldn't shake the feeling that Valerie was hiding something. Her calmness seemed too rehearsed, but without evidence, he couldn't move forward. Back at the station, Freeman's first order of business was to request the hospital's surveillance footage. A technician was waiting for him with a flash drive. Sir, I've reviewed all the footage. As you suspected, there was a system malfunction between 2:30 and 2:45 a.m., but I was able to recover partial footage from the camera in the maternity ward hallway about 10 minutes before the malfunction. The technician played the footage. A dimly lit hospital corridor appeared on the screen. The nurse on duty was sitting at the desk, filling out some documents. At 2:20, a female figure walked down the corridor, slender, dressed in dark clothes, carrying a large bag. She was wearing a medical mask and sunglasses, and a scarf covering her hair. Strange choice for a hospital at night, Freeman remarked. And that's not all, said the technician, zooming in on the image. Look at her gait, smooth, confident, as if she knows exactly where she's going. This doesn't look like a regular visitor wandering the corridors. Freeman nodded. Can you tell which room she went into? Unfortunately, no. The camera only covers the hallway, and then there's a blind spot. And 10 minutes later, the system malfunctioned. Too convenient, Freeman muttered. I need to talk to the nurse on duty. She must have seen that woman. Loretta Johnson, the nurse on duty that night, looked tired and shaken. She fidgeted nervously with her name tag as she sat across from Freeman in the hospital break room. Miss Johnson, do you remember this woman? Freeman showed her the still image from the surveillance camera. Loretta stared at the image and nodded. Yes, she came to the desk at about 2:30 in the morning. She asked where the vending machine was. I pointed her in the right direction, and she left. I didn't see her again. Did you notice anything unusual about her appearance or behavior? The nurse thought for a moment. She was very well dressed for someone coming to the hospital at night. Expensive shoes, manicured hands, and perfume. Loretta suddenly perked up. Yes, I smelled expensive perfume when she leaned over the desk. Would you recognize her if you saw her again? I don't think so. Her eyes were hidden behind glasses. The lower part of her face was covered by a mask. Her hair was under a scarf. Loretta suddenly froze. Wait, when she leaned over, I noticed an earring. A pearl one. Very elegant. Freeman tensed. Anything else? Well, the nurse continued hesitantly. When I pointed to the vending machines, I thought I saw the woman glance toward Miss Thomas's room. It was as if she already knew where she was and was just checking. Have you told anyone that we have a patient who just gave birth to twins? No, of course not. That's confidential information. Although, Loretta frowned. A woman came in earlier today asking about a patient with twins. She said she was from social services. I didn't give her any information, but she may have seen Elisha's name on the patient list on the monitor. What did this woman look like? Tall, slim, well-groomed, dark skin, short hair, very elegant. The description could have fit Valerie Clark, but it was too vague to draw any firm conclusions. Miss Johnson, did you notice if the night visitor was missing anything when she was at your desk? No, not that I can remember. Loretta hesitated. Wait a minute. In the morning when I came in for my next shift, the cleaning lady found a hairpin in the hallway. She gave it to me, thinking maybe one of the staff had lost it. I still have it in my locker. A few minutes later, Freeman was holding a small designer hairpin with a pearl tip. Are you sure you found it in that hallway? Yes, not far from Miss Thomas's room. I wanted to find the owner, but we have a lot of nurses and patients and… Loretta trailed off, suddenly realizing the possible significance of the find. Do you think it's connected to the murder? Freeman didn't answer, carefully placing the hairpin in a plastic evidence bag. Thanks for your help, Miss Johnson. You've been a great help to the investigation. Back at the station, Freeman immediately sent the hairpin for analysis and began searching for information about Valerie Clark. He looked through her social media pages, photos from charity events, and official photos with her husband. In one photo taken at a charity event a week earlier, Valerie was pictured with an elegant hairstyle adorned with pearl hairpins, exactly like the one found at the hospital. Freeman enlarged the image. Valerie's hairstyle had at least 6 such hairpins holding the intricate structure in place. The loss of one of them could easily have gone unnoticed, especially if the woman was in a hurry to leave the scene of the crime. Freeman printed out the photo and placed it next to the bag containing the hairpin he had found. The resemblance was undeniable, but one hairpin wasn't enough. It was too circumstantial. He needed more evidence to link Valerie Clark to the murder of Elisha Thomas. The detective leaned back in his chair, considering his next steps. Valerie's motive was obvious: to save her marriage, her social status, her financial position. But how could he prove that she had broken into the hospital that night and killed her husband's mistress? He needed financial records, proof that Valerie had purchased a gun, evidence confirming that she knew about Elisha's pregnancy long before she admitted it. Freeman picked up the phone and dialed the judge's number to obtain a warrant to access the Clark couple's bank accounts. It was only the first step in a long chain of investigations that he was sure would ultimately lead him to Elisha Thomas's killer. Detective Isaac Freeman sat at his computer, carefully studying Valerie Clark's bank statements. The warrant he had obtained from the judge gave him access to the suspect's financial history for the past 6 months. Most of the transactions looked standard for a woman of her status. Purchases at expensive stores, payments for a personal trainer, donations to charities. But one transaction caught the detective's attention. Exactly 1 month before the murder, $15,000 in cash was withdrawn from Valerie's account. The payment description read, "Personal expenses." It was the largest amount withdrawn during the entire period under investigation. I wonder what kind of personal expenses require $15,000 in cash, Freeman muttered, making a note in his notebook. He called his partner, Detective Rodriguez. Carlos, I need your help. Find out everything you can about illegal arms dealing in the city. I'm particularly interested in dealers who could sell a gun with a silencer to someone in high society. Someone reliable enough to ensure confidentiality, but not directly connected to the major gangs. Rodriguez whistled. Sounds like a job for Tony Malik. Who's that? Ex-military, been dealing guns for 10 years. Works mostly with clients from wealthy neighborhoods, people who want protection but don't want to show up in official records. He's been on the police's radar a few times, but he's always gotten off thanks to good lawyers. Do you have anything on him? A couple of informants might know how to get in touch with him. Give me a couple of hours. By evening, Rodriguez returned with the address of an electronics repair shop that served as a front for Tony Malik's operations. Freeman decided to act immediately. The shop was located in an unremarkable building on the outskirts of town. When the detectives entered, a middle-aged man with a military bearing was standing behind the counter. Tony Malik? Freeman asked, showing his badge. Detective Freeman, New Haven Police Department. We need to talk. Malik nodded calmly, as if he had been expecting such a visit. "About what, detective?" "About a woman who bought a gun from you about a month ago. Expensive suit, pearl earrings, impeccable manners. She paid $15,000 in cash." Malik's face remained impassive. "I repair electronics, detective. I don't sell guns." Freeman placed a photograph of Valerie Clark on the counter. "This woman, you sold her a gun, the gun she used to shoot her husband's mistress." Malik glanced at the photograph and looked back up at the detective. "Do you have a warrant?" "You have two options, Tony," Rodriguez interjected. "Either you cooperate and get a chance to make a deal with the investigation, or we search this place and you go to jail for a very long time. Your choice." Malik thought for a few seconds, then sighed. "Let's go to the back room." In a small office cluttered with boxes of electronics, Malik closed the door and turned to the detectives. "I don't know her name. She didn't introduce herself, but yes, I recognize that woman. She came to me about 6 weeks ago. She said she needed a gun for self-defense. She seemed nervous but determined." "What kind of gun did you sell her?" "A 9mm Beretta with a silencer, practically new, no serial number. She paid $15,000, no haggling." "Did she say what she wanted the gun for?" "Like I said, for self-defense. She mentioned that someone was threatening her family." "And you believed her?" Malik shrugged. "My job is to sell, not ask questions. But if you want my opinion, no, I didn't believe her. She was too calculating, too calm for someone who was really afraid for her life." "Did you show her how to use the gun?" "Yes, I gave her a quick lesson. She was a quick learner. She said she used to be a marksman." Freeman made a note in his notebook. Another detail Valerie hadn't mentioned. "Are you willing to give an official statement?" Malik paused, then nodded. "If there's a deal. I don't want to go to prison for accessory to murder. Accessory will be difficult to prove if you really didn't know about her plans. But illegal possession of a firearm is a serious charge." "I understand, detective. But I'd rather make a deal now than spend the rest of my life in prison." Freeman nodded. "All right. Come to the station tomorrow and give your statement. And don't you dare try to disappear." Leaving the workshop, the detectives exchanged glances. "Do you think she still has the gun?" asked Rodriguez. "If she's smart, she got rid of it right after the murder. But people make mistakes, especially those who think they're invincible." The next morning, Freeman reappeared at the Clark's doorstep, this time with a search warrant and a team of officers. Valerie opened the door with the same impassive expression as before. Only a flash of concern crossed her eyes when she saw the police officers behind the detective. "What's going on?" she asked. "We have a search warrant for your home, Mrs. Clark," Freeman replied, handing her the document. "You may be present during the search or wait elsewhere." "This must be some kind of mistake." Her voice trembled slightly. "On what grounds?" "We have reason to believe that the murder weapon used to kill Elisha Thomas may be in your home." Valerie paled but quickly regained her composure. "That's absurd. But please, go ahead with your search. I have nothing to hide." The police methodically searched the house, checking every room, every closet, every drawer. Freeman watched Valerie, who sat in the living room, maintaining a calm exterior. Only her trembling fingers betrayed her inner tension. "Mrs. Clark," Freeman began, "is there anything you'd like to tell me before my people find what we're looking for?" "I have nothing to tell you, detective. Not even about the $15,000 you withdrew from your account a month ago?" Fear flashed in Valerie's eyes, but she maintained her composure. "Those were personal expenses." "For what exactly?" "Jewelry. I bought an antique necklace from a private collector. He preferred cash." "Interesting. Can I see the necklace?" I gave it to my mother. She lives in Florida." "You paid $15,000 for a necklace and gave it away immediately? You didn't even keep the receipt or a receipt?" "It was a private transaction, detective. No paperwork." At that moment, one of the officers entered the living room. "Detective Freeman, we found something in the bedroom." Valerie flinched but said nothing. In the master bedroom, one of the police officers pointed to a safe built into the wall behind a painting. "It was locked, but an expert was able to open it. Inside, we found this." The officer handed Freeman a gun in a plastic evidence bag. "A 9mm Beretta with a silencer," Freeman commented. "Just what we were looking for." Returning to the living room, he showed Valerie the bag with the gun. "Do you recognize it?" She shook her head, but her eyes were filled with terror. "I've never seen this gun before. I don't know how it got into our house." "That's strange, because your fingerprints were found on it, and the gun dealer has already identified you as the buyer." Valerie remained silent, staring at the floor. "Mrs. Clark, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Elisha Thomas." At the police station, Valerie sat in the interrogation room, waiting for her lawyer to arrive. When he finally showed up, Freeman began the formal questioning. "Mrs. Clark, where were you on the night of Elisha Thomas's murder between 2 and 3 o'clock?" "I already told you, at home, in bed with my husband." "Your husband says the same thing, but we have a witness who saw a woman who looked like you at the hospital around that time. And we found your hairpin in the hallway of the maternity ward." Valerie glanced at her lawyer, who nodded slightly. "I wasn't at the hospital that night." "What about the day before the murder? Did you go to the hospital pretending to be a social worker?" Valerie remained silent again. "Mrs. Clark, the gun found in your home will be sent for ballistic testing. If it turns out to be the murder weapon and your fingerprints are on it, combined with Tony Malek's testimony—" Freeman paused. "You're facing life in prison." The lawyer leaned toward his client and whispered something in her ear. Valerie shook her head, but after a few minutes of quiet conversation, she seemed to give in. "I want a deal," she finally said. "It depends on what you can tell us." Valerie took a deep breath. "I knew about their relationship. I knew about the pregnancy. Raymond thought he was hiding it well, but—" She smiled bitterly. "After 15 years of marriage, you noticed these things. Why didn't you tell him you knew?" "I waited. I thought it was just a fling that would end. Even when I found out about the pregnancy, I hoped he would come to his senses. But then I found the papers for the apartment in Boston, the divorce papers. He was going to leave me." "And you decided to get rid of Elisha?" Valerie closed her eyes. "You don't understand, detective. I gave that marriage 15 years. I built a reputation, a position in society. If he left, I would lose everything. And not just money, all my charity work, my job at the foundations. All of that depends on the Clark name. I couldn't let She broke off. "Let Elisha ruin my life. So you bought a gun?" "Yes. And you went to the hospital to kill her." Valerie nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I found out about the twins from my friend who works at the hospital. I went there during the day to find out the details, but I came back at night. I disabled the security cameras. My brother works in IT. He showed me how to do it." She spoke monotonously, as if recounting events that had happened to someone else. "I entered her room. She was awake, feeding one of the twins. She saw me and immediately recognized me." "What did she say?" "She said, 'Please don't hurt the children.'" Valerie sobbed. "The children! She thought I had come to kill them. I told her I wouldn't hurt them, that I would never hurt the children. I just wanted her to disappear from our lives." "And you shot her?" "Yes, once. She didn't even scream. She just looked at me in surprise and left. I put the baby in the crib and left. I don't know how I lost my hairpin, probably when I took off the mask." Freeman listened silently to Valerie's confession. The story was simple and tragic. A woman unwilling to let go of her life, a husband who fell in love with another woman, a mistress who paid with her life for a happiness that never came. "What will happen to the children now?" Valerie asked after a long silence. "They're with their father. Raymond picked them up from the hospital this morning." She nodded. "Good. They should be with their father." 2 days later, ballistics confirmed that the gun found in the Clark home was the murder weapon used to kill Elisha Thomas. Valerie Clark was officially charged with first-degree murder. Thanks to a plea bargain and a confession, she avoided life imprisonment, but was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Raymond Clark sold his business in New Haven and moved with his sons to Boston, to the very apartment he had once bought for Elisha. He named the boys Miles and Marcus, names he and Elisha had chosen together before they were born. Every month, he took his sons to the cemetery where their mother was buried. And every time, he promised her that the boys would grow up knowing how much she loved them. Detective Freeman sometimes thought about the Elisha Thomas case, about the woman whose life was cut short just as it was about to begin, about the twins who would never know their mother, about Valerie, who lost everything she had tried to hold on to, and about Raymond, who now had to live with the consequences of his decisions. It was one of those cases that left no sense of satisfaction even after it was solved, only the bitterness of knowing that sometimes love comes at too high a price.